In this lesson, we'll finish up the male reproductive system by taking a look at male sexual function. Then we'll take a look, just kind of an overview of spermatogenesis, which is the production of sperm. And then we'll take a look at the anatomy of a sperm cell. So, male sexual function overall is coordinated by complex neural reflexes. It involves both systems of the autonomic nervous system. If you remember, guys, the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic, both of them are a part of the autonomic nervous system. So it turns out when a male becomes sexually aroused, there's an increase in parasympathetic outflow over the pelvic nerves, leading to an erection. And that was the last thing we talked about in our last lesson. If you remember, the release of the nitric oxide resulted in the blood vessels dilating and allowing for the erection to occur. So let's continue that a little bit. Let's take a look at male sexual stimulation. It initiates the secretion, if you remember, the bulbourethral glands. Like I had said, those glands are not involved in making semen. They're more preparing the male for sexual intercourse. It's going to help to lubricate the spongy urethra. And if you just want to add in your notes, lubricate, but also remember we said to neutralize the spongy urethra also, and the surface of the glans penis. Now, once sexual intercourse is taking place, eventually there's going to be two parts to the male releasing the semen. We're going to say the first part is called emission. This occurs under the sympathetic nervous system. Peristaltic contractions of the ampulla, if you remember that was the swelling of the vas deferens, actually pushes the seminal fluid and the sperm into that prostatic urethra. Remember that's through that ejaculatory duct. Then contractions in the seminal glands and the prostate move the seminal mixture along the urethra. So you can see this emission part is just the release of the seminal fluid and the prostate fluid into the urethra. This last thought's actually important. Sympathetic contraction of the urinary bladder and the internal urethral sphincter prevents the semen from going back into the bladder. Remember, we want the semen to go down into the urethra, right? That would actually be called retrograde ejaculation. If this didn't close up, right, the ejaculate theoretically could go backwards, retrograde into the bladder. We wouldn't want that. Okay, so emission, just as an overview, is just the release of the seminal fluid and the prostatic fluids into the urethra. Now, the second part is going to be the actual ejaculation. Most people know this term. Most people don't really know the emission part. So the ejaculation occurs with the powerful rhythmic contractions in some muscles that are located in the pelvic floor. You may or may not have learned them. The ischiocavernosus and the bulbospongiosus muscle. They're pelvic floor muscles. Both of those help to stiffen the penis even more and propel the semen towards the external urethral opening. At the same time, that's actually causing a pleasurable sensation, which we call an orgasm, right? So the actual ejaculation is producing this pleasurable sensation. Once the orgasm is complete, right, and ejaculation is complete, there's a period of resolution where the heart rate goes down, the blood pressure decreases, and the blood now starts to leave the erectile tissue, and the erection is lost at that point, and the penis will become more flaccid. The process of losing the erection actually has a term. They call that detumescence, right? That's the actual process of losing the erection. Okay, so let's take a look at spermatogenesis. This is just an overview. This is the process of sperm production. It begins at the time of puberty, but lasts well into the male's entire adult life. Right? There's men known to be have conceived children, in their 80s and so maybe even in their 90s. The process of spermatogenesis is actually a long one. It takes about 64 days. So let's take a look at some of the cells that are involved with spermatogenesis. In the seminiferous tubule, there is a stem cell. that is kind of on the outside of the seminiferous tubule. I'll show you in a minute, known as the spermatogonia. Right? So those are the stem cells. They divide continually, producing one cell that's going to become a primary spermatocyte, and that's going to eventually become a sperm. And then the other cell is going to remain a stem cell. This way, we always have stem cells along the outside of the seminiferous tubule. This is a cross section of the seminiferous tubule right here. Now, this is the lumen where the sperm cells eventually will be. But take a look out here, guys, on the outer portion of the seminiferous tubules. These are the stem cells. I'm sorry, this spermatogonium. Right? Once they split, one cell will stay here, and then the other cell will become like one that goes over here and continues this way to become a sperm. Right? So again, the one I want you to know is the stem cell is the spermatogonia. Then they continue to divide. Where are we? They'll be the spermatogonia will become primary spermatocytes. Primary spermatocytes will divide and become secondary spermatocytes, and those eventually become spermatids. The spermatids each have half of the genetic material, right? So these are actual immature sperm that contain half of the chromosomes. I didn't mention that earlier, but all of our body cells, our somatic cells, we have 46 chromosomes. In the sperm cell, we only want to have half of that. We want to have 23. So that when fertilization takes place, the oocyte or the egg has the other 23 to form 46 in the new individual. Right? So we want to make sure that our spermatids at this point only have half of the genetic material. So if you take a look over here, the spermatogonia were these ones over this way. Then they became the primary spermatocytes. That would be these over here. Then these become the secondary spermatocytes. And then finally we're going to get the spermatids, which eventually are going to become spermatids here. Notice they're in contact with the this cell right here. This is called the nurse cell, right? This is the nurse cell. I had mentioned this on a previous lesson. These are staying attached to the seminiferous tubule. Now, the spermatid is going to differentiate now, meaning going to mature into a sperm. That process is known as spermiogenesis. Be careful. That sounds like spermatogenesis. That's different. Spermatogenesis is the whole process of forming sperm. This is the last step of the sperm maturing. The spermatids are going to become a sperm. Right? So spermiogenesis sounds like spermatogenesis. Right? Just be careful with that. It can be confusing. Right? So spermiogenesis, what I want you to know is where the spermatids are going to mature into a sperm. Right? So each spermatid becomes one sperm. Right? There's going to be major structural changes within the sperm so that it actually looks like a sperm cell. At spermiation, right, a sperm is going to actually lose its attachment to the nurse cell. So remember I said that the spermatids are attached right here to this purple area. This is the seminiferous tubule. This is where the nurse cell is going to be in here. The nurse cell kind of oversees the whole process of spermatogenesis. So at spermiation, these cells are going to detach. Let me go back to the note for a second. All right, so at spermiation, the sperm loses its attachment to the nurse cell and now enters the actual lumen of the seminiferous tubule. Right, it's going to go into the seminiferous tubule lumen. So if I go back a second, right, this would be the lumen here. So now we'll have the sperm that are mature in the lumen. This is a slide, just as kind of an information only. You don't have to memorize what's happening here, that type of thing. But this is actually showing when you have a spermatid, then going through the stages of spermiogenesis and eventually becoming the sperm. Right. So this is the stages of spermiogenesis. Okay, so that's that. So let's finish up by taking a look at the anatomy of the sperm cell. Like I said before, the sperm loses contact with the seminiferous fluid and it enters the fluid of the lumen. Each sperm is going to have three parts generally. The first part is the head. So if we go back a picture here, this top part here is going to be the head. Right? Then there's a little neck which is going to lead to a middle piece. And then finally this big whip over here is going to be the tail. Right? Sometimes they call that the flagella or the tail. Okay, so the head contains the nucleus that has the 23 chromosomes in it. At the tip of the head, there's something known as the acrosome. This is going to contain different enzymes that are necessary for fertilization in order for the sperm to enter and make contact with the oocyte. There are these cells around the oocyte, and I'll talk about this down the road, known as the corona radiata. The acrosome enzymes help to break down that corona radiata so that the sperm can get to the oocyte. So the acrosome is actually just made up of the saccules from the spermatids Golgi apparatus. I'm not too concerned about that. I'm more concerned that you understand that the acrosome has these enzymes that are necessary for fertilization to occur. All right, the middle piece is what's going to attach the head, is going to be attached to the head by a short little neck. The main thing I want you to know about the middle piece, this is where there's mitochondria. Remember we said that the sperm kind of feeds on the fructose from the seminal fluid to produce ATP. So we have to have mitochondria. And then finally, there's going to be a whip-like tail, right? So this is the organelle that basically is going to propel the sperm all the way up to where the oocyte is, the eggs, right? And then this has a complex kind of corkscrew motion. So again, the parts of the sperm, the head, the middle piece, right? And the middle piece is connected to the head by a neck, and then this is going to be the flagella or the tail. Okay, so that concludes our lessons on the male reproductive system.